What does it take to get into an elite business school? MBA Crystal Ball is a boutique admissions consulting firm. Each year, we help a select few applicants get into the world's best business schools. Here's one of our success stories to inspire and educate.
Hello and welcome to MBA Crystal Ball. How does someone with no corporate experience compete with other MBA applicants having strong consulting, technology, or finance backgrounds? Our guest today is one such rock star, and I mean that quite literally. Even as he was pursuing his undergrad from the famous Berklee College of Music, Achyuth Jaigopal started his band called When Chai Met Toast, which has fans around the world today. He approached MBA Crystal Ball after his previous application did not work out. And this time around, Achyuth has admits from two elite business schools with scholarships.
Thanks, Manish. Thanks for the very kind intro.
Sure. Absolutely. We are happy to have you. For our viewers' benefit, can you give us a quick overview of your profile?
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, I'm Achyuth, 28 years old, co-founder of When Chai Met Toast, which is, one of India's most popular English music bands. I was born in Kochi, south of India, in Kerala. Born to architect parents. They founded their practice 30 years ago, pioneering sustainable architecture when such concepts were unheard of in the country. My grandfather was actually, a priest who turned into an entrepreneur. He established two hotels in the city that I come from. So, I've had such an upbringing, and this inspired me to take some very unconventional decisions in life. And the first of those decisions was at 16, when I was inspired by the concept of the green school in Bali, Indonesia, and I persuaded my parents to send me to study my 11th and 12th grades there. So those 2 years in Bali were actually like life changing for me, because it was there that I formed my first band with 6 members from 6 different countries. So I'd taken guitar lessons from when I was like 8, 9 years old, but then it was in Bali that I actually got the confidence to actually, step on stage and perform. I met my most influential music mentor in Bali. And it was like a really cool 2 years where, I was studying, I was good at my academics, I was involved in a lot of extracurriculars. I was performing at cafes in the island. I also, worked with not-for-profits in the island to raise money for, these not-for-profits. And so these initiatives won me a full ride scholarship for my senior year at the Green School. So after graduating, I was uncertain whether, I wanted to pursue a career in music, because it's quite a different, path coming from, from India. And I was also like interested in architecture, which was the family business. So I was caught between the two. I did, gap year to discover which field interested me more. And in that gap year, I did a music performance certificate, and I also, the same year I came across an audition for a very popular Indian folk music group called the Raghu Dixit Project. I gave it a shot, and, suddenly I was selected. I was presented with an opportunity of a lifetime at 18. So I couldn't say no to the opportunity. I started touring around the world. I performed, in that year and a half, I performed over 150 concerts, including venues like the Sydney Opera House, the Glastonbury Festival, and so on. So I did that for a year and a half. In that year and a half, I also started collaborating with a good friend of mine. And we had started, a band called When Chai Met Toast, and we performed some of these songs at a TV show. And one of the songs got really popular. It started generating a buzz in the music circles. And so after a year and a half, I just stepped down from the Raghu project. Two reasons. One was because I wanted to, finish my undergraduate education. That was a priority for me. And the second was that I knew that, this project, When Chai Met Toast, had some potential, and I wanted to devote more time for that. So between 2017 to 2020, I was, balancing undergraduate, education with Berklee College of Music Online, along with, taking forward my band, which was quite rigorous, balancing the two. But I enjoyed the whole process. And I also want to leverage, the momentum that I had as an established performer. 2022, I graduated online, though it didn't make too much of a difference for me, because I did my education predominantly online. From 2020, I also took more of a business role with the band, because we had reached a certain scale. We were taking on big projects, and we had to divide responsibilities. So I was doing that. I also started working with my family business on the side. 2021 to 2024, we were expanding. We had listeners around the world now. We did tours across, UK, North America, Australia, Southeast Asia, and it's been a gradual journey, but it's been a very fulfilling one. And I'm excited for what holds in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. This sounds, like a lot of stuff that you've achieved, at your age. But now coming to, the MBA question, it's extremely unpopular, or I mean, I shouldn't say unpopular, but uncommon, right? I mean, for performing artists, so why did you think about it? Where does it come fit into your plans?
Initially, the motivation for pursuing an MBA had little to do with my music career. I was also working with my family business, and at that point, I felt a skill gap. Working with senior professionals at the family business. At the same time, when I was taking on more managerial responsibilities with the band, I also faced this skill gap when working with my mentors and senior in media conglomerates and so on. So I faced this when I was negotiating with clients, when I was charging tours and all that. So I felt that an MBA would really help my personal and professional development. Over the years, the aspiration has sort of, I've also been, I did an internship with a music publishing and licensing company, and that exposed me to the whole world of music licensing and publishing. So even pursuing something entrepreneurial is something that I'm excited about. So those were my motivations for pursuing an MBA. I recognize that it is uncommon for a performing artist to pursue an MBA, but my whole journey has been quite unconventional. And also, it has been it's been a dream of mine to be in an academic atmosphere with high achievers from different fields and learn in that atmosphere. So that was another reason.
Okay, that's fair enough. Now let's turn back the clock 2 years to 2022, right? I mean, so you're already done with your GMAT, put in your applications. Things didn't go your way. I mean, so talk to us. I mean, how was that experience? How did you kind of, kind of come back from that, so to say?
Yeah, so I actually took my GMAT in 2021. I
Okay.
remember the day very clearly. It was my birthday that I decided to do my GMAT on.
Right.
And I actually gave only one attempt at the GMAT because I did my prep during COVID. The COVID time was when I had like a lean period from shows. And I knew that, okay, I wanted to do an MBA at some point in the next 5 years. I didn't know when I would get a good window. So I made most of the COVID window to prepare for GMAT. I got a 680. I was reasonably happy with my score at that time. And I did not do a reattempt because things got busy after that. So I was quite happy. It was around the average of most schools that I was applying to. It was also, I knew that my background was quite unconventional and I could stand out amongst the larger pool. So I applied to Cambridge Judge. I applied to Imperial College Business School on my own. I hardly took any guidance. Little limited guidance was from my family and some friends. And it didn't go my way. I got rejects from both the schools. Probably looking back, I think my essays were very high level. I didn't have clear post MBA goals. I am not someone who takes rejection very easily. So I felt quite defeated. I was questioning whether, I was wondering, what would it would take for an adcom to get an admit in a top, for me to get a top admit, because I came from a very unconventional background. I was uncertain whether my score was good enough and so on. But I knew that, my journey was quite different. I knew that with the right guidance, maybe I could give another shot. And that's when I came across MCB and when I met you, and, there was no looking back after that.
Sure, sure. That's great. And I think so. You started with us, even though you had kind of had this application, you started with, our MBA map, which kind of, is essentially around strategy setting and all that. So how did that discussion help, and guide your journey? Talk to us about that a bit.
Yeah, so the map was actually the start of the whole introspection process, the deep introspection process that you go through the MBA application. I realized that there's so much depth that you have to go into to craft like very good essays, which I hadn't even done like 10% of that the previous academic cycle. I mean, when I was applying the last year. So that really helped streamline my goals, my, MBA pitch. It helped me shortlist the schools. I had a broad idea of the schools that I was looking at, but I wasn't sure where I stood. So in one way, it gave me a reality check as well as like it gave me some confidence that, okay, these are some schools that I can attempt to. And if I, upped my game a little bit, there were some schools that I could, possibly give a shot at. And it really gave me a good list of schools that I could apply to.
Sure, sure. So where did you end up applying? Which rounds did you apply?
Yeah, so I applied to four schools. I opted for the four school package with MCB. So I applied to INSEAD, Cambridge Judge, Oxford Side, and ISADE. And most of the schools I applied round one itself because that's when most of the scholarships are available, and I felt that I could get the decisions faster. So I applied round one for all schools except Oxford.
Got it. And I mean, so why did you decide on this particular geography? I mean, because traditional or more common is US or even Indian schools. So tell us about how did you go about deciding this?
So I knew from the start that the max I could take off from my music career was 1 year. So that limited myself to European programs because most of the US programs are 2 years, and that's too long for me to be away from, the band and just being in the music career. With that considered, the UK, I especially had an affinity towards UK because I lived there before, I've worked there, I've recorded there, and I especially admire the music and the tech industry in the UK. I feel that UK is a place that I feel I want to live a year in. Especially, Cambridge and Oxford having the collegiate system was something that, really drove me to applying to UK schools in particular. INSEAD was more of an outside shot. It was a very, very highly ranked program. I wasn't sure if I would stand a chance, but then I gave that a shot. And then ISADE was more because of the entrepreneurial focus. Also, I feel that looking back, I think the 1 year program is a better, fit for me, especially someone from my sort of a background who wants to, come back into the country. It's shorter term away from the workforce, better ROI and so on.
Fair enough. That makes sense. And when you kind of now, from the map to the application packages, right? I mean, or the application work, anything that stands out, you kind of remember from our sort of process, that you would say were the highlights, so to say.
Yeah, plenty of highlights. One was at that initially I wasn't sure, but the blunt feedback style that you gave me, the first draft that I sent you, and all the lines in red, all the edits that you gave and everything that you suggested, suddenly, like, it was suddenly eye opening for me because I thought that I was doing a good job with my essays, but I realized that there's so much depth that I can go into. And, I was being very high level, very superficial with all my stories. My stories were really special, but they could be, put together so much better. So that was really eye opening. And then I feel from the second draft onwards, I was on a, upward trajectory. I got everything together. I knew that, okay, I had a hang of the process. And from then, the whole experience was quite smooth. Another highlight for me personally was a tip from you that of reaching out to alums from my dream schools. I reached out to a lot of alums, actually maybe over 15 overall combined, and this was really cool because a lot of them had heard of the band, and they were really happy to help out. One of them attended a show in New York. One of them gave me a campus tour of the Oxford University, the business school. And so it was really cool. I have like 15 additional friends now in different parts of the world, and
Right.
it's a great way to learn more about the program, and actually gave me an insight into what these students actually learn, what differentiates these different MBA programs, where I would be a good fit, and all that.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, all makes sense. In moment of truth, so share with our audience, where all did you get in, what kind of financial assistance?
I got interviews from all the schools that I applied to, which itself was a big thing for me, coming from last year's rejections. So Cambridge, I got an admit the very next day after my interview. It was really surprising that it came so soon, and I was like ecstatic. INSEAD, I had two in-person interviews. Both of them went really well. I got an admit from INSEAD as well. Oxford, instantly I got a reject, and from ISADE, because I already had admits from Cambridge and INSEAD, I chose not to pursue that application further. And I got scholarships from Cambridge and INSEAD, especially a very generous one from Cambridge, a £40,000 scholarship for professional impact, and that really made me really happy.
Absolutely, yeah, that was a big one. I mean, so now typically a very kind of straightforward decisions for most, right? I mean, so but tell us, why did you pick Cambridge over INSEAD?
Right. So, like I was mentioning before, I was seeing which school is the best fit for me. And Cambridge, ticked a lot of boxes in that sense. Cambridge is known to be more of an entrepreneurship focused program, whereas INSEAD is more, consulting oriented. So, because my post MBA goals were more to do with entrepreneurship, family business, and on those lines, I felt that the Cambridge program, having its hands-on learning and its entrepreneurship lab, made a lot more sense. ROI wise, also it made a lot more sense because I had a larger scholarship. INSEAD gave me a 20,000 euro scholarship, whereas Cambridge offered a 40,000 pound, and the tuition fee is also lower in Cambridge. So overall, the scholarship covered more than half of my tuition fee. And coming back to India, especially when I'm not looking at working in the Europe, and the ROI made a lot more sense for me, to start my entrepreneurship venture, or to come back to the country. It made a lot more sense. And also, I feel the UK was a place, is a place that I would rather spend a year in as compared to France or being in Asia. So yeah, those were the three main factors that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, what kind of suggestions would you have, right? I mean, as an underrepresented, someone who comes from an underrepresented group, right? I mean, so 2, 3 suggestions that you would have for people with similar profiles, or sort of people who are not so commonly kind of found in these school campuses when they are applying.
Yeah. So I'll give you three suggestions, three advices per se. So first would be, I was very underconfident of myself. I was wondering why a top MBA program would take in someone from a performing arts background. But actually, you should see your background as an advantage, because MBA programs do value diversity. They do value, you often people from unconventional backgrounds have really interesting stories to tell. So if you're able to put your application in a way that, that can convince the adcom that you will be a good fit for the program, that can be, you can really take your unconventional background as a strength when applying. So even if you don't have an elite GMAT score, like my GMAT score was probably lower than a lot of, the compared to a lot of other Indian applicants, whereas my stories probably and my professional experience really stood out. So the first thing would be to be confident in yourself and not shy away from applying to the top programs that you really dream of. The second would be to do your research, to actually find out which are the good programs, because I feel that certain programs like say Cambridge and NCI, they value diversity, diverse profiles more than certain other programs, maybe something like an Oxford or maybe an M7. I'm not sure how that works in the US, but do your research, do things. So something that really, when I was doing my research and reaching out to alums, something that really I think set my application apart was I sent in, as part of the additional documents. So I went a little extra and sent in a PDF of all my newspaper clippings, all the articles that had covered me. That gave a lot of, that backed up my story a lot, in terms of having all this press coverage. So second would be do your research. And the third would be to not hesitate to ask for help, because you are often surrounded by, your immediate community wouldn't have had experience doing MBA applications. So that's where, you and MCB and the whole process of going through this, this application process with you really helped me, because I feel that alone I wouldn't have had the guidance to, sometimes the stories that I felt didn't make the cut would be ones that you said, you suggested as the right stories for certain essay prompts. So having that sort of a third person perspective to help guide your narrative, I think that is extremely helpful, especially even more when you're coming from, an unconventional background.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, agree. So, as a parting kind of gift, you're a songwriter. Are there any of your lines that are kind of opportune for this, journey, your emotions that capture them well?
Yeah. So interesting thing is that as part of our essays, we, one suggestion that you gave me, which I think set my essays apart a lot, was to have some of my song lyrics,
Yeah.
as intros to the essays. I think this was an idea which I wouldn't have had myself. But this really gave a lot of like intrigue value to my essays. So I'll just mention a couple of lines from one of the songs that I wrote. So the lines go like, take a step, take a leap into the other side you don't see. Let your heart beat in time to the rhythm that you desire. So it's more about having that opportunity out there, but taking that leap and having confidence. And I think that really encapsulates this whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the best for your next leap. We'll be closely watching your career moves. And thanks for talking to us, Achyuth.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch. And thanks for watching, everyone.
We hope you found this interview helpful. At MBA Crystal Ball, we've helped many applicants get into the elite business schools, often with scholarships. Reach out if you're looking for professional help with your applications. Good luck.